Hey everyone, welcome back to another deep dive. Today we're going to be diving into David Vance's The Business of Learning,
Right.
but we're not just going to be like summarizing the book or anything like that. We're going to be like extracting, I think, some of the most juicy bits about disciplined execution.
Yeah, that's good.
So imagine you've got this amazing learning and development strategy all mapped out.
Okay. Yeah,
How do you actually make it happen?
that is the question, right?
That's the question, right?
I think that's where disciplined execution really comes in.
Yeah.
And Vance really, nails it in his book in terms of like what that looks like, bridging the gap between a brilliant idea and actually like seeing it through to tangible results.
Yeah, so it's not just about like doing things right.
Right.
It's about consistently like delivering results, right?
Yeah, you got to be able to consistently do it. And that's where the discipline part comes in.
But what does that actually like look like in the world of corporate learning?
Well, it's like if you're training for a marathon. Okay.
You wouldn't just show up on race day and expect to win.
Right.
Right? You'd have a plan.
Yeah.
You'd have the resources, and you'd have like the grit and the discipline to stick with it.
Yeah.
That's kind of what disciplined execution in corporate learning is about.
Okay. I get the marathon analogy, I think. But, some of our listeners might be wondering, like, why should I care about this? This sounds very, corporate world.
Yeah.
How is this relevant to someone who's maybe leading a small team?
Yeah.
Or even like working on their personal goals?
I think that's a great point because this is something that is actually surprisingly universal.
Okay.
Whether you're trying to, hit a quarterly target or launch a new product or write a novel,
Yeah.
the principles of disciplined execution still apply.
Yeah.
It's about turning intention into action and getting things done.
So how do we actually do it?
Yeah.
What are like the key ingredients?
Yeah, so Vance breaks it down into 7 key elements.
7. Okay.
And the first one may seem obvious, but,
Mhm.
a lot of times it gets overlooked.
Yeah.
Clear objectives and priorities.
Okay.
You have to know where you're going and what matters most.
Right. If you don't have a destination in mind, any road will get you there.
Or nowhere.
Or nowhere, exactly.
That's why it's so crucial to define those objectives up front
Mhm.
and make sure everyone on your team understands them.
Yep.
And then comes the part where even big picture people like yourself might have to embrace a spreadsheet or two. We're talking about detailed plans.
Oh, okay.
I know.
And I can appreciate a good plan,
Yeah.
even if I'd rather be brainstorming the next big idea.
Right.
But why are those detailed plans so important?
Well, think about this. You're launching a new training program.
Okay.
You need to figure out timelines, set milestones, allocate resources, and make sure everyone knows like who's responsible for what.
Right.
Without that level of detail,
Right.
it's very easy to get sidetracked, miss deadlines, and ultimately fall short of your goals.
So the detailed plans help keep us organized and on track, which leads us perfectly into, I think, the next element, accountability.
Yes.
But what does accountability really mean in this context?
Yeah.
I think it gets a bad rap sometimes where it's just about like pointing fingers.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a common misconception.
Yeah.
Accountability isn't about blame, it's about ownership.
Okay.
It's about, creating a culture where everyone knows what they're responsible for.
Yeah.
And they feel empowered to, make decisions and take action.
So it's less about gotcha and more about we're all in this together.
Precisely. Yeah. And when people feel that sense of ownership,
Yeah.
they're much more invested in the success of whatever that initiative is.
Okay, so we've got clear objectives,
Right.
detailed plans,
Yeah.
accountability.
Uh-huh.
But even with the best intentions, you can't execute anything without resources.
That's right.
So that's Vance's next element, right?
Yes, resource management.
Resource management.
And this goes beyond just budget.
Yeah.
We're talking about managing people, time, technology, and any other resources that you need.
Yeah.
To bring your vision to life, think of it like baking a cake.
Okay.
You need the right ingredients and a functioning oven to
Right.
create that delicious masterpiece.
Ooh, yeah. But speaking of things going wrong,
Uh-oh.
communication has to be a key element too, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, we've all been a part of projects where information gets lost. Deadlines are missed. It's just chaos.
Communication is so crucial.
Yeah.
Vance stresses the importance of clear, consistent communication throughout the entire process.
Yeah.
It's about keeping everyone on the same page.
Yeah.
From that initial kickoff meeting to celebrating the wins at the finish line.
So regular check-ins, progress reports.
Yeah.
And maybe even a team chat to celebrate milestones.
Totally, all part of the disciplined execution playbook.
Okay, but I imagine even with great communication, things don't always go according to plan.
Oh, that's right.
So what happens when those inevitable roadblocks pop up?
That's where monitoring and tracking comes in.
Okay.
It's like having a GPS on a road trip.
Yeah.
You need to know if you're veering off course
Right.
and make adjustments along the way.
So we're not just like setting a plan and then hoping for the best. We're actively like checking our progress, analyzing the data, and, making informed decisions based on what's actually happening.
Exactly.
But sometimes even with all the planning and monitoring in the world, things just go sideways. Like in those action movies where the hero's plan gets completely blown up,
Oh, yeah.
but they still manage to save the day.
Right.
So that's where agility comes in.
Agility and adaptability.
Yes.
That is essential for navigating those unexpected challenges that will inevitably come up.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to pivot, adjust your timeline, reallocate resources, maybe even rethink your approach entirely.
Totally.
But the key is to just stay flexible and focused on the end goal.
Okay, so to recap, we've got clear objectives,
Yes.
detailed plans, accountability, resource management, communication, monitoring, and tracking, and finally, agility.
You got it.
That's a pretty comprehensive framework.
It is. And it's important to remember that all of these elements are interconnected.
Yeah.
They work together to create that system for turning great ideas into those tangible results.
Okay, so we've got the framework down.
Right.
But how do we actually put these elements into practice?
That is a great question.
What are some of the tools and strategies that can help us execute like pros?
Yes. And that's something that we're going to be diving into in the next part of our deep dive.
Oh.
We're going to explore Vance's recommendations for like practical tools from project management software to learning management systems, and we'll discuss some specific strategies for overcoming some of those common challenges.
Sounds like we've got a lot more ground to cover.
We do.
Stick with us, listeners. We're just getting started.
Stay tuned.
Welcome back, everyone. So we laid out Vance's framework for disciplined execution, the why, the what.
Right.
Now let's get into the how.
Okay.
What are some of the tools that can help us bring this framework to life?
Yeah, so luckily for us, we live in a time where there's tons of tools available to help us streamline and really supercharge our efforts.
Totally.
And one category that Vance highlights is project management tools.
Okay.
Think Asana, Trello, Monday.com.
Okay.
These platforms are like having a virtual assistant
Yeah.
that keeps everything organized and on track.
Okay. Those names definitely ring a bell. I've dabbled in project management software before.
For sure.
I'll admit I sometimes get a little overwhelmed by all the features.
Oh, yeah.
Any tips for using these tools effectively for learning initiatives?
Absolutely. I think the key is to start simple.
Okay.
Don't try to use every single feature right out of the gate.
Right.
Just focus on those core functionalities that really align with Vance's elements.
Okay.
So use the task management features to break down your project into those manageable chunks, assign clear responsibilities to your team members, and set those deadlines.
So we're essentially using these tools to bring those detailed plans to life and make sure everyone stays on the same page. What about tracking progress and making sure we're hitting those milestones?
Most project management tools have built-in features for tracking your progress and visualizing those timelines.
Okay.
You can use Gantt charts to get that bird's eye view of the entire project schedule, or Kanban boards to visualize your workflow and see where things might be getting stuck.
Okay.
And the beauty of these tools is that a lot of times they integrate with other platforms.
Yeah.
Which brings us to another essential tool.
Okay.
The Learning Management System, or LMS.
Okay, I've heard of LMSs.
Sure.
I'll admit I'm a little fuzzy on what they actually do.
Yeah, so imagine like a central hub for all of your learning and development activities.
Okay.
That's your LMS.
Okay.
It's where you host your online courses, you track learner progress, manage assessments, and gather all sorts of valuable data.
Oh, okay.
So this is especially useful for, managing those large-scale training programs and ensuring consistency in the delivery.
So it's like a one-stop shop for everything related to learning and development.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, cool. But even with all of this data at our fingertips,
Right.
how do we make sense of it all?
Yeah, that's a great question.
How do we know what's working and what needs to be tweaked?
That's where dashboards and analytics come in.
Okay.
These tools take all that raw data and turn it into those visually appealing, easily digestible insights.
Okay.
So you can track those key metrics like your course completion rates, learner engagement, and even assess the impact of your programs on those business outcomes.
Oh, wow.
So think of it like checking the dashboard of your car.
Okay.
It gives you all the vital information you need to stay on track and make those informed decisions.
I love that car analogy.
Yeah.
Makes data visualization feel way less intimidating.
For sure.
But speaking of making things easier,
Yeah.
can we talk about checklists?
Yes.
I am a big believer in the power of checklists
Oh, me too.
to streamline processes and prevent those oops moments.
Yes. Checklists and templates are absolute lifesavers, especially when it comes to disciplined execution. Think about it. Instead of reinventing the wheel every time you launch a new initiative,
Right.
you can use a checklist to ensure that consistency, reduce those errors, and free up your brain power for that more strategic thinking.
It's like having a recipe for success.
Yes,
You can follow the steps, add your own little personal touch,
totally.
and consistently create, a delicious outcome.
I love that.
Okay, so checklists, good.
Yes.
So we've got project management tools, learning management systems,
Yep.
dashboards, and checklists in our toolkit.
We are well equipped.
That's a pretty solid arsenal for tackling discipline and execution.
We are ready for battle.
But let's face it, even with the best tools and intentions, there are always going to be bumps in the road.
Of course.
What are some of the common challenges that Vance warns us about, and how can we overcome them?
Yeah, so he identifies 5 key challenges. And the first one is something that we touched on earlier.
Okay.
That lack of clarity.
Right.
Ambiguous objectives, vague plans, unclear roles. All of these things can lead to confusion, miscommunication, and ultimately derail your efforts.
It's like trying to navigate a maze without a map.
Yes, exactly.
You might eventually stumble upon the exit,
You might.
but it's going to be a frustrating and inefficient journey.
Absolutely. That's why it's so crucial to invest the time up front to define those objectives very clearly.
Yeah.
Develop those detailed plans and communicate those roles and responsibilities very effectively.
Communicate.
Yeah. Make sure everyone on the team understands the why behind the initiative,
Yeah.
the desired outcomes, and how their individual contributions fit into that bigger picture.
So clarity is key.
Absolutely.
What's another challenge that we need to be prepared for?
The dreaded resource constraints.
Ooh, yes.
Limited budget, staff shortages, time crunches.
Yeah.
These are realities that many of us face, especially in today's fast-paced environment.
It's like trying to run that marathon with only one shoe.
Ouch, that's a painful image.
I know, right?
But you get the point when resources are tight. Prioritization becomes even more crucial.
Right.
You need to focus on those initiatives that will have the biggest impact
Okay.
and make strategic decisions about how to allocate your limited resources.
So it's not just about doing more with less.
Right.
It's about doing the right things with less.
Exactly.
Okay, what's the next challenge on Vance's list?
Resistance to change.
Ooh.
This one can be a little tricky because it often involves those emotions and perceptions.
Yeah.
People get comfortable with the familiar, even if it's not the most efficient or effective way of doing things.
I know this one all too well. Try convincing my family to try a new restaurant instead of our usual Friday night pizza place.
Oh, yeah.
It's a battle.
Change can be hard, even when it's for the better.
Totally.
And so to overcome that resistance, it's essential to engage those stakeholders early on.
Okay.
Clearly communicate the benefits of that change and address their concerns.
So it's about making people feel like they're part of the process. It's not just subject to it.
I like that.
What else can trip us up on our quest for disciplined execution?
Poor communication.
Ooh.
This can manifest in so many ways.
Yeah.
Unclear messages, missed deadlines, siloed information.
Right.
It's like playing a game of telephone where the message gets distorted with each retelling.
Oh, yeah. I once got lost on a road trip because my friend gave me terrible directions.
Oh, no.
Bad communication can lead you down some very wrong paths.
Absolutely. That's why Vance emphasizes the need for those open communication channels and transparency throughout that entire execution process.
Okay.
So regular check-ins, progress reports, feedback loops,
Yeah.
all of these contribute to keeping everyone informed and on the same page.
So we need to talk a lot.
Yes, communication is key.
Okay. What's the final challenge that we need to be aware of?
Ineffective monitoring.
Okay.
Remember that GPS analogy?
Yeah.
If you don't check your GPS, you might end up in a cornfield instead of at the finish line.
Right.
Without proper monitoring, you have no way of knowing if your learning programs are staying on track and meeting their goals.
So it's not just about setting a plan and hoping for the best.
Right.
We need to be actively tracking our progress, analyzing the data, and making those course corrections along the way.
Exactly. And that's where those dashboards and analytics that we talked about earlier come in handy.
Yeah.
They provide that real-time visibility into what's working and what's not, allowing you to make those data-driven decisions and keep your initiatives on course.
Right. So we've covered like the core elements of disciplined execution, right? The tools to help us stay on track and even, some of those common pitfalls to
I
avoid.
hit all the major points, yeah.
But before we wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
I'm curious, how do we know if we're actually succeeding?
Right.
How do we measure the effectiveness of, all of our hard work?
That's a great question. And, that's where things get really interesting, because measuring success in disciplined execution goes beyond just checking those boxes on a to-do list. It's about evaluating that impact.
Yeah.
Are you actually hitting those targets that you set?
Right.
Are you seeing those positive changes in behavior or performance?
Oh, okay.
Are you getting feedback that the training is actually making a difference?
Yeah, so it's not enough to just like deliver the training on time and within budget.
Right.
We need to actually see if it's moving the needle.
You got it.
But how do we gather that kind of feedback?
Why?
Do we just like send out a survey at the end of a course and call it a day?
Surveys can be helpful,
Okay.
but they're only one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
Vance recommends taking a more holistic approach to measurement.
Okay.
He suggests gathering feedback from multiple sources.
Like what?
So, learners, instructors, managers,
Okay.
and even stakeholders outside the learning and development team.
So it's about getting that 360-degree view
Yeah.
of how the initiative is performing.
Exactly.
But what about those concrete metrics?
Okay.
How do we actually quantify success?
Yeah, that's where those dashboards and analytics we were talking about earlier really shine.
Okay.
They allow you to track those key performance indicators, or KPIs,
KPI.
that align with your objectives.
Okay.
So, for example, if your objective is to improve employee knowledge of a new product, you might track metrics like quiz scores, participation rates in those online modules,
Okay.
and even sales data after the training has rolled out.
So we can actually use data to see if the training is translating into like real world results.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is powerful, but data can be overwhelming.
It can be. Yeah.
So any tips for making sure we're focusing on the right metrics and using them effectively? I think one of Vance's biggest pieces of advice is to keep it simple.
Okay.
Don't try to track everything under the sun.
Right.
Just focus on those metrics that are most meaningful to your objectives.
Okay.
And that'll actually give you the insights you need to make those informed decisions.
Yeah. And remember, data is only as good as our ability to interpret it. So look for those trends and patterns and anomalies
Yes.
that can help us understand what's working, what's not, and where we might need to adjust our approach.
You got it.
This is starting to sound less like corporate jargon and more like just a recipe for success in like any area of life.
Totally.
It's about setting goals, making a plan, taking action, tracking your progress, and being willing to adapt along the way.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
All right. Well said. Big thanks to David Vance for giving us this roadmap.
Absolutely.
And to you, our amazing listeners, for joining us on this deep dive
Yes.
into the world of disciplined execution.
Yeah, it's been fun.
We hope you've gleaned some valuable insights and practical tips that you can apply to your own projects and goals.
I hope so too.
And remember, disciplined execution is a journey, not a destination.
Absolutely.
It's about continuous improvement, learning from your experiences, and always striving to do better.
Could not agree more.
So before you go, we would love to hear from you. Think about a recent project or goal you've worked on. Which of Vance's elements of disciplined execution did you find the most helpful? What were some of the challenges you faced, and how did you overcome them? Share your thoughts, experiences, and questions with us on social media using the hashtag disciplined execution.
Yes, please do.
We can't wait to hear from you. That's a wrap for today's deep dive. Happy executing, everyone.
Happy executing.